Hello everybody, I'm Randy Mills, your Sports History Now host, where we bring Kentucky's greatest sports memories alive, one story at a time. As a boy growing up, I lived for Friday nights. High school football games in the fall and basketball games throughout the winter. I couldn't wait for Friday nights, counting down the days to the next big game. And my second favorite day of the week came on Saturday mornings. Mom and Dad didn't have to worry about me sleeping in, because I couldn't wait to dive into the sports pages, study the scores, and read the write-ups from games across the state. I was fortunate to live in a house where we subscribed to both the Louisville Courier Journal and the Lexington Herald. I devoured the articles that came from the pens of these talented sports journalists. Sports writers have been and continue to be so instrumental in the growth and popularity of sports in our state. These amazing storytellers paint a picture for their readers that captures the excitement and drama of sporting events. Our state has been blessed with many outstanding sports writers in years gone by, and many today are carrying on that tradition. And while I hesitate to mention a few of the greats, and with apologies to those throughout the generations that I may not recall, writers such as Earl Cox, Oscar Combs, Billy Reed, Earl Ruby, Bob Watkins, Mark Maynard, Mike Fields, John McGill, Dave Kindred, and Larry Vaught, and so many more, have made contributions to the sports world that will live on forever. Now there is one name that I did not mention, and he is actually the subject of today's Sports History Now podcast. He is widely revered as Mr. Kentucky High School Sports, a Kentucky institution. He covered high school sports for over 6 decades for the Louisville Courier Journal until his death at the age of 89 in 2024. Yes, he is none other than Mr. Bob White. Darrell Griffith, who led the University of Louisville basketball team to its first NCAA championship in 1980, once said, "If you played high school sports in Louisville and Bob White came to your game, you knew it was special." His Courier Journal colleague, Jody Demling, termed Bob White as the GOAT, the greatest of all time of high school sports reporting. If he walked into your gym on a Friday night, you knew it was big time. Mr. White joined the Courier Journal staff in 1959, and upon his retirement in 2000, he recalled that he was an 8th grader when he attended his first Sweet 16 in 1949, watching Owensboro's Cliff Hagan score 41 points to beat Lafayette in the championship game played in the old Jefferson County Armory. He continued to work for the Courier Journal on a part-time and freelance basis until 2017, and it was always a special treat for me to look behind the scores table every year at the Sweet 16 and see Mr. White hard at work, loving his profession. One of our state's most outstanding basketball tournaments is the King of the Bluegrass tournament, held at Fairdale High School each year. And in Mr. White's honor, the Most Valuable Player Award in the King of the Bluegrass tournament is named in his honor. In 1997, he was inducted into the KHSAA Dowahire's Hall of Fame. In 2006, he was inducted into the Kentucky Journalism Hall of Fame. And in 2008, he was inducted into the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame. He was voted the Kentucky Sports Writer of the Year in 1999, and he received the Kentucky Association of Basketball Coaches Lifetime Media Achievement Award in 2004. He received a Distinguished Service Award for the National High School Athletic Association in 1991. And Mr. White, yes, Mr. White was a friend to all, one of the most beloved sports journalists to ever join the profession. And I was privileged to conduct an interview with Mr. White during the 2000 Sweet 16 in Rupp Arena. And now I'm so pleased to share this special memory as we release Episode 8 of the Sports History Now podcast.
This is Randy Mills, and I am with Mr. Bob White inside Rupp Arena at the 2000 KHSAA Sweet 16 State Basketball Tournament on Friday afternoon, March the 17th. Of course, Mr. White He's been a long time premier sports writer on the Courier Journal staff, and I'd like to ask Mr. White to begin by sharing with us his inspiration for going into sports writing, the way he came to the Louisville Courier Journal, and the years he began and the years that he spent in service to Kentucky high school sports as a sports writer.
Well, I got interested in sports by reading the Lexington Herald-Leader when I lived in Lexington, and they had all these little shorts in the paper about grade crossing and stamping ground and all the small schools around Lexington playing, and I started reading them. And then when I moved to Louisville at the age of 14, my father worked at the Courier Journal, and he worked at the Herald-Leader too, but I was always interested in UK basketball and football. Then when I got to college, in freshman orientation, they asked me what I wanted to major in. I had no idea, and I just blurted out journalism. And it so happened I joined a fraternity my freshman year who had the sports editor of the UK Colonel. And he asked me if I wanted to help him on the paper. And I did, and I helped. I was a sports editor in my senior year, and that's how.
What year was that, Mr. White, those years that you were at the University of Kentucky?
1953 to 1957. Bear Bryant's last year as football coach was my freshman year. And I remember going down to the student union for supper around 8 o'clock at night, and it was pitch dark, and the football lights would still be on the practice field, and they'd still be practicing. And anyway, after UK, I went to Cynthiana, Kentucky for 4 months on a weekly. And then I went to Cleveland, Tennessee for a year and a half. And the Courier Journal had an opening. The professor at UK called me and said, there's an opening at the Courier Journal, and I got an interview for you with Earl Ruby if you want it. And I said, well, I definitely want it. I went up there and I got the job about 2 weeks, and I've been at the Courier Journal since March 2nd, 1959. I've been covering high school sports since 1963. Well, I started out 62 football season. Earl Cox moved up to assistant sports editor, and I'd helped him a couple of years, and I just, that's when I became full-time on high schools, and I've been there ever since.
Now, I have to ask, as an aside, maybe you were in Cynthiana for 4 months. Did you encounter Lewis Stout as a high school basketball player in Cynthiana, or did you miss him? Was he around at that time? You said Cynthiana, Kentucky?
Right. I can't remember. I don't think he was playing then. That was 1957. He might have not have been old enough yet.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I remember they had a night's a great big restaurant right next to the newspaper office was Old Country Cooking, all you could eat. I remember that, and I just stayed there that one summer, and I wanted to get into more. I did everything there, so covered the sheriff's office, the police office, and the county courthouse, and I wanted to get more in sports.
Well, let's look back to your early years as a sports writer at the Courier Journal, and what are some of the early tournaments that you remember? Of course, when you say 1963, I think we go back to the great Seneca teams with the Unsolds, Reds, people like that. What do you remember of those early days?
Well, I remember seeing Mike Redd as a freshman. I just couldn't believe the kid was that good, that in the 9th grade. And, of course, Wesley Unseld was a man among boys. He was just so strong and powerful and so smart with the ball. But those were great days. Seneca was loaded then. There was a new subdivision around the Seneca High School, and they just had all kinds of talent. They got all the good black kids out of Newburgh at one time, and that's where Unseld and Red and all them came from. And it was just a great stepping stone for that school. I mean, the way to start it out.
Mentioning the fact that they were fortunate enough to get the great black players out of the Newburgh area, do you recall high school basketball in Kentucky before integration? And then, if so, then can you comment on how the game changed or what impact integration had on high school sports in Kentucky?
Well, yeah, I remember, back in when I was at UK, I used to go to the state tournament in 54 and 55 and 56, and the teams were all white then, and then Pikeville was using the full court press then, which a lot of the black teams do now, or all teams do now. And once the black schools started playing, I think there was that period where they had a hard time adjusting and getting the fair shake and things, and it took Louisville Central a long time to get the state tournament. Once they got there, they started doing well, and Dunbar had some good teams, and they got out of the 11th region, but they never did win the state tournament. And I think until Louisville Central won in '69, there was maybe that feeling that maybe they couldn't do it, but Central proved they could, and now it's added a lot to the game. It really has. I can remember covering games back when there were all white schools and all black schools, and there was that tension in there about would there be trouble after the game if it was a close game and a controversial call here or there. And that's not the way anymore. I mean, especially in the Louisville area since busing. All the schools have good black athletes and good white athletes, and there's not that racial issue anymore like there used to be.
What changes have you seen in the way sports is reported, or maybe how your role has changed? If much, at the Courier Journal, the emphasis that's placed on getting the news from the newspaper, maybe the way that the newspaper has impacted even Mr. Basketball races over the years, or things along that line. Comments about maybe how the newspaper has impacted the game and the way people across the state feel about it.
Well, I think the reporting is much more in depth now than it used to be. You can read stories 40 years ago, and there wouldn't be too many quotes in a story, and mainly be just factual stuff and game, play-by-play stuff. And now it's more analytical type of reporting, and more in depth, and more quotes, and sometimes more into the personal lives of people than it ever was before. And I don't know if television brought that on, or just the advancement of time. It just seems like people's lives are more under a magnifying glass now than they ever were before. Not so much on a high school level, but really on the college and professional level.
When you think of some of your favorite Sweet 16 state tournaments, are there some that immediately come to mind, some of your favorite tournaments, favorite teams, and maybe even some favorite players that you recall?
Well, the 56 tournament when I was still in college was a great tournament, when Carr Creek won it and Kelly Coleman played at Wayland. That would be hard to top. The 87, 88 state tournaments with Richie Farmer and Allen Houston back to back were just great shows. I mean, anybody who missed Richie Farmer's 51-point game really missed something, they'd never forget. And the 65 tournament was a big thrill because of Breckinridge County. They had Butch Beard, who was around 6'2", and the rest of them were around 5'8" or 5'9". And the way they came from way behind to beat Hazard in the semifinals, and Hazard had all that size, and the crowd. That was the first example of a crowd picking up a team and really carrying them to victory. I mean, Breckinridge County had some talent, but that crowd really got behind them, and there was no doubt that inspired them.
Yes. Have you seen changes in the way coaches have been pressured in their hometowns? I mean, is there more pressure now on coaches to perform and succeed, or or you think it's about the same, or it's always been that way, or maybe there was a time in the past where it was more difficult on coaches? Is that changed much, making that job a little bit harder to accomplish, or how do you view expectations changing on the coach over the years?
I think coaches have to coach differently than they did 30 years ago now. I don't think they can roughhouse a kid and get by with it, and I don't think they can do a lot of cursing and all of that as much as they could back in the old days. I don't know if there's that much pressure. Coaches are hired as teachers first, and I think more coaches today are probably better teachers than they were maybe 30 years ago. They don't stress basketball as much. In some ways, I know Bryce Hibbert, a male, he's an algebra teacher, and I think he's really considered a good classroom teacher as well as a good coach, and he puts a lot of emphasis on his church work carrying over into the school and into the kids' lives, and I think you have a lot more of that now. As far as coaches getting fired just for not winning, I think that's more so in college, in pros, than in high school. I think high school coaches are usually given a pretty good chance to prove themselves before their contract's not renewed.
We've jumped into talking a lot about your professional experiences, and of course, even as we speak today, we have a big quarterfinal round game today, so both of us have to get to our workstations shortly. But I do want to give you an opportunity, though, to back up just a bit, because you did mention that your father was a newspaper man, and tell us a little bit about the household you grew up in, something of your mother, father, maybe your siblings, and then a bit more about your inspiration to become a sports writer. How that was ingrained in you, and how you made the determination this is something that I want to do.
Well, my father was on the mechanical end of the newspaper, so he wasn't a writer or a reporter or anything. My mother she stayed home, the old-fashioned way, and I was the only child. And it's strange, but I'm about the only person in my family that really is crazy about sports. My mother knows nothing about it. My dad was interested in somewhat. He followed, he knew I liked it. And he was such a good dad that I saw the first UK game in Memorial Coliseum. And he took me to the PGA golf tournament, the National PGA, when it was in Louisville back in 52 or something like that. So he knew how much it meant to me, and he took me to those kind of places. And but I think I got my love of sports from a grandfather I never knew. Because my mother told me her father was a great Cincinnati Reds fan. And he was in the Salvation Army. He was in charge of it in Covington, and he had season tickets to the Reds games. And that's the only relative I know that really was liked sports as much as I did, and I never knew him. And that's kind of strange, but that's about how it happened.
Well, especially I think at the state tournament, we tend to focus a bit more on basketball, but let's spend just a little bit of time also with some discussion of football and maybe some of the changes you've seen through the years in football, or some of your football reporting also, because that's been certainly a large part of your assignment as well.
Well, I really enjoy football because they play once a week, and you get a little time to do features and little in-depth stories and stuff like that. Basketball is just every night, and it's really hard to get involved like that, but I like basketball. Football, I think the playoffs are the greatest thing that ever happened. I think colleges are missing the boat completely, not having playoffs. Because I think the way they started out with 3 classes and all of the Jefferson County teams were the only teams in 3A, that was a bad setup. Because it wasn't a state championship. It was nothing but a county title. When they went to 4 classes, it really made the coaches in Louisville, realize they had to beat some good teams outside the county to win it. And I think it helped the teams out in the state. I think the football system has really been outstanding. And the playoffs now, the state finals, are a real good show. They're like the state tournament. It's just 2 days, but coaches from all over the state go there now. By getting that off of Thanksgiving weekend, it really helped. The attendance almost doubled, and the interest is just at a peak right now.
Tell us a little bit about your role as you came into especially the high school sports writing, in which you said you began in about 1963, and maybe how you've shaped that. How has that changed the State Journal in terms of devoting space to high school sports articles and that sort of thing, and maybe the way you've been able to impact that personally because of your force of presence and wanting to kind of fight for high school athletics and give it just as much space as you possibly can?
Well, when I first started in 1962-63 season, there wasn't any wrestling. Girls weren't playing yet. There wasn't any soccer yet, no softball. And we just really went strong on football and basketball. And then when the girls started playing, you still have that same amount of space, but you got to divide it up now. I think the Courier was one of the first papers that really started out trying to treat the girls as equal as the boys. And because we hired 2 women sports writers the first year the girls started playing. And I think we do as much on the girls now as we do the boys, which I think is fair. I don't understand why the girls didn't start playing back, say, when I was in high school. Because there were some good athletes I know in my neighborhood that played with us in the backyard, and they were good. And they couldn't do anything but cheer. But that has changed. And then the KHSAA adding all the different sports over the years, which is good. They've got everybody involved, and that's cut down on some things. As far as we might not do as much as on basketball as we did, say, 30 years ago, because now you got the state wrestling tournament, you got the state swimming championships, and things, and you've got the girls playing, and it's a different ball game now. But I think the fact that the more students are involved in athletics is the good result. And I think the girls now are, their games are as interesting as the boys. I mean, there's no difference to me whether I cover a girls game or a boys game. They've got the same strategies. The boys may be stronger physically and maybe quicker, but the girls probably are stronger fundamentally as far as what they how they handle the ball and stuff like that. They don't try to overdo what they can do.
As I think about the mid 60s kind of being a golden age, when you think about the Wes Unselds and Mike Reds and Clem Haskins and Butch Beards and people along that line. Of course, the game has changed somewhat, but how do you respond to that maybe age-old question of, well, could those guys play with these guys today? What are some of the changes you've seen, and how do you feel about that question?
Well, I think the Seneca team in 1963 would play with anybody right now with Unseld and Red. I don't think there's any. I think the Ashland team of '61 could run with any of these. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the game has changed, and it's a full court game now. There's no bringing the ball up the floor without any pressure and setting up an offense and running patterns. It's not that type of game now. You got to be able to handle the ball. I think that's one reason the shooting's not as good as it used to be. Because the defense is better. There's more pressure defense on, and you could see Tyler Zorns the other night. And if he'd been left open, he might have hit a bunch of shots. But he had to force shots because if he didn't, he wasn't going to get them. And the defense was right in his face, and there was the double teams and all that constantly. It just for 32 minutes. It's not like when a team gets 10 points behind with 3 minutes to go, then they start pressing. They press from the first minute.
You've mentioned some of the great names, and I think it would be great to have just a few comments about a few names that I may toss out, and then you may add a few names if you would like. But let's start with King Kelly Coleman.
Well, he was he was a unique character. There's never been one like him. I mean, he was a great shooter and really a great player. And I don't know, I can't remember. I doubt if he played much defense, but he was a show in himself. He really was. I mean, to score like he did, 68 points in one state tournament game. That really is. And he was around 6'3", and he's pretty husky, so he could go over most kids and get his shot off. And like I say, there wasn't that pressure defense back in those days. Character-wise, there's a lot of stories about him, but he's a legend. There's no doubt about that.
You mentioned the great Ashland team. Can you remember Larry Conley?
Yeah, I sure do. I remember. I saw Bob Wright today at the Coaches Association meeting, and I said, well, Bob, you almost won in 1962, too. And he said, well, Conley was the key. I mean, he was the only senior we had back from the 61 team, but he kept the others together, and he made us just as good a team. Conley was one of those unselfish guys that played for the benefit of the team and not himself, and you got to have somebody like that. There's not many, but he's, he did the same thing for Rupp's runs.
That's right. Yeah. We've had your thoughts on Mike Redd and Wesley Unseld to some extent. How about a Clem Haskins?
And the only time I saw Clem Haskins play was in the state tournament in 1963. And Earl Cox was covering it when Clem was really his junior year. And Clem was a lot of people thought he was better than Mike Redd. And of course, Mike Redd didn't do much in college. He went to Wesleyan, but Clem did well at Western, and then he played in the pros. Clem was real smooth. I remember that. He's about 6'3" or so, and he had a great career in college, but I just only got to see him play once in high school, and I just remember him being, he wasn't a ball hog or nothing. He wasn't like Kelly Coleman. He was a team player, and he probably could have scored 25 a game, but he didn't. But his team was successful, and that's what mattered to him.
Well, let's fast forward to a couple of more recent names, and then see if you have a few names you'd like to toss in, that special kids that you've interviewed and worked with that you remember, or special teams and special coaches. But let's move ahead to the 87, 88 years in particular, and the feats of Richie Farmer, the Bobby Keith, Clay County era. What will you recall of those days?
Well, Bobby Keith, I think, is, if he wasn't the best coach that ever came down the pike, it'd be hard to pick one better as far as getting what he got out of those kids. And he was just another character, but he knew what he was doing. And boy, I heard him on the radio about a week ago talking to Lloyd Gardner, and he was rattling off all these stats about Clay County back in the 87, 88. And I told Lloyd, I said, I bet you every one of those stats he gave out was correct, because his mind was fantastic when it came to basketball. His Clay County, he went to the state tournament quite a few years before he really started winning. And once he got a few above average players, he showed what he could do. his teams were just so popular with everybody, and because they weren't overly talented, but he got a lot out of them. Richie Farmer, just was, one of those once in a lifetime type players who just got 110% out of his ability. And the Ballard teams Clay County played then were really good teams. They weren't overly big. They were just average size, but Allen Houston was a class individual. Came from a good family. His grandfather was W.L. Keene and coached Louisville Central to, I think, 4 national championships. Then you had little Mark Bell, who was a really exciting player to watch. And those 2 years, I think, just really captivated the whole state. Because those, Clay County and Ballard, even though they were rivals, I think they had a lot of respect for each other.
I agree.
And I think they still do.
Yes. Are there other players or coaches or any situations, any gyms you've been in, or any kind of odd deals, maybe even during the regular season, or anything that may have arisen during your career that you can relay?
Oh, I got locked in Henry Clay's gym one night. I had to write a story on a game, and they told me, well, just shut the doors when you leave and all that. And, well, anyway, everything was locked, and I had to call the principal to come back and get me. And he opened the door, and things like that. I always like to go to Henry County for the 8th region tournament because it was just the atmosphere. It's a great big gym. The gym's bigger than the school. It seats about 6,000. You go in there, and all these women are selling homemade cakes and pies and pizza and everything. And all the people around town, Henry County might not even be in it, but these people are sitting on the stage watching. It's what really down home basketball is all about. It's not like it in the city, and you've just got to be there to appreciate it. And I don't get up there every year, but that's always been one thing I always look forward to.
Well, growing up as a fan of high school sports, Mr. White, I certainly would be the first to commend you on what a tremendous service you've provided for high school players, for their coaches, for communities during your, I guess, really nearly 40-year tenure is what we're looking at. As you wind down this career, are there certain thoughts that you would want to share as we wrap up, or as you look back and say, well, gosh, maybe I should have done this a little differently, and I doubt there's much anything you would have done differently. But what in looking back, has it just been really a fulfilling kind of experience for you?
It really has. It's been something I really enjoyed. I can't say there have been a lot of tough times, a lot of tough situations, and especially you get into, you go out on the road to report, and sometimes schools don't understand that you need a telephone and you need a little time after a game to write a story, and some of them have tried to rush you out and stuff like that. But I think more and more now schools are understanding what it means to let the media come in and report on their teams, and then as long as they do a fair job, they'll treat them with respect and let them get their job done. It's so many things have changed. When I first started out, the KHSAA for years had no sports information director. And you'd have to call Joe Billy up, or Ted Sanford, or Tom Mills up, and they would be the spokesman. And now you've got Butch Cope there, and before him, Downing. That's been a great help to us. It's to get up the records updated and things. That's really been we used to have WHAS keep the box scores at the state tournament. The guy who keeping the shot charge for WHS would make us a copy and give them to. That's how we got the full form boxes for the Courier, because the KHSAA didn't do that then. They didn't have an SID, and we were the only ones that had that, and we had to pay them for it, but it was worth it. But now everybody in the States gets those box forms after each game, and it's a different ball game now. I just hope that the young people keep coming to the state tournament after their teams have played in it, because you see all these old guys like myself here every year. Well, one of these days we're not going to be here, and you hope that the kids will carry it on, because it's a great.
It is.
I'm getting kind of sentimental now,
Yes.
but it's good. It's really a great show. I mean, anybody who hadn't been here they don't understand it. It's
Exactly right.
and the sportsmanship usually at the state tournament has been great. I know they've had some problems over the years, but everybody has that. But all in all, it's I think kids who make it never forget it.
Well, it is a great show, and I think what you've done is really helped to heighten the awareness of what a great show the Sweet 16 is, the high school football playoffs, and with you goes such a world of knowledge, and the support that you've provided has just been absolutely tremendous. Anything else you would like to add?
Well, I think other sports have really improved. I think the baseball situation, if you've ever just traveled around and see all the good facilities in baseball now. I mean, Pleasure Ridge in Louisville started, they have a minor league facility out there. And they did so much out there. The other schools around Jefferson County started building their own nice places, and for softball too. And I think that's another big change I've noticed. They've all got nice fields, and they take care of them, and dugouts now like the major leagues have. And these kids don't realize how lucky they are. I mean, to have things like that. So I think that's another big change, and the sport of soccer is, I think, caught on.
Mm-hmm.
It's a natural sport for girls.
Mm-hmm.
They've picked it up so quickly, and the boys, that's almost like a major sport now in the fall.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
And I'm surprised there's not more schools in wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, volleyball's picked up, where I think volleyball, some of the schools that don't have it, like in West Kentucky, are missing.
Right.
I think
Yes.
they're missing the boat.
Mm-hmm.
There's room for volleyball and
Yes.
basketball.
Mm-hmm.
The Louisville schools and Northern Kentucky schools have proven that.
Yes.
And I really think giving the women the opportunity to play as much as the boys is probably the biggest thing that's happened over my 38 years. That was a long time coming, and it shouldn't have taken that long.
That's right. Very good. Well, Mr. White, we thank you so very much for your time and for all the contributions you have made, and best of luck.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us today for this special tribute to the legendary Hall of Fame sports journalist, Bob White. We've received lots of positive feedback from our previous episodes, and we encourage you to continue to tune into Sports History Now as we strive to bring to life Kentucky's greatest sports moments, one story at a time. And before we close today's show, a big thank you to another of our Sports History Now supporters, Gary Edmondson. The support of friends like Gary helps us continue to bring these episodes of Sports History Now to life.